Hey everybody, Douglas here from Rev Rides, and today we're going to be switching the tire on the S22. Let's get to it. First, you'll need a screwdriver to remove the top plastic piece on top of your motherboard. Next, you'll need two 5mm Allen keys to remove your lift switch and suspension from the chassis, preferably one with a ballpoint end. Next, you'll need a 4mm Allen key. This will be to remove your motherboard and to remove the motor screws. Lastly, you'll want some tire irons to remove your tire. I highly recommend these spoons, the one on left and right, that have a rounder edge, so that way you're not gonna puncture your tube. An optional thing to add would be some new motor screws that are a higher quality, as the ones that come stock can strip pretty easily. Also, you can use a magnetic dish or some cup to hold all your screws so you don't lose them in the process of a tire swap. First step here is to remove these two screws so we can take this plastic piece off the top of the motherboard casing to be able to remove all the screws there. Next, we're going to remove the motherboard holder by removing all of these Allen screws along the outside. And to get to the last few, you got to remove your lift switch here. You may also use power tools, but they're more likely to strip the Allen screws. Now that we've removed the Allen screws from around the outside of the motherboard holder, we're going to remove the motherboard holder. Be very careful not to press the power button because you don't want the wheel turning on while it's on a stand. First, unplug your battery connectors and light connector. Now, being careful not to press the power button, we're going to flip the board over. Now we need to get these screws out to get to the motor wire. The motor wires are in sequence of blue, green, yellow, and then the Hall sensor. Now we're going to unplug our motor wires and move the motherboard aside, powering it on to drain the capacitors. Now we've gotten our motherboard holder off. We're going to remove the lift switch and the suspension from the body by using two Allen keys to get either side here and loosen it out. These shouldn't be very tight, as you don't want your suspension to be so tight that it can't move. Be careful, as there is a washer that goes in between the lift switch and the frame, and you don't want to lose that. Now we're going to do the other side. My favorite part about the S22 tire change is that now we don't have to take off the pedals, and we can just slide the motor right on out. Now we have our motor out. We need to remove our 4 motor screws on either side. Don't be afraid to add some heat to these to loosen up the Loctite that is in their stock. Otherwise, you can end up stripping your screws and making it a lot harder for yourself. Now we'll flip it and do the other side. Now we're going to remove these 2 screws here, so that way we can release our motor wire. Now we're going to remove the inner mudguard from the tire. Just be careful of your motor wire line, not to mar it up. Before you do your tire swap, if you didn't pop your tire, you'll need to release the air first. If you did pop your tire, just go ahead and move along to removing your tire. Removing the valve stem can make this process a lot quicker. Now you need your tire irons to remove your tire. Put all three in to start. Now go ahead and pull them in any order, removing the middle one each time to move it back to the outside. As you get closer to the valve stem, the tube will be closer to the rim and a lot easier to pop. So be aware of that. Now go ahead and remove your tube. Go ahead and pull the tire off the rest of the way, or don't. To get the tire off the rim, you may need to use a tire iron. Go in from the back, push the tire up, grab around the other side of the rim and push over. Then slide it over and do that again. Once you get about a quarter of it off, it should just slide right off. Now we've just gotten our tire off, we're going to put our new tire on. You want to start from one side at the bottom, kind of wedge it into place, and you may have to use a tire iron again to get it the rest of the way on, as sometimes the rubber can be a little bit grippy. Now that your tire's on, we'll put the tube inside and then get the valve through the hole. And you want to try and sit the tube down into the rim, so that way it's not sticking out of the tire like it is here. Now we can put our valve in through the hole. You want to make sure once it's through that you kind of wiggle your tube around to be sure that it's nice and straight, not twisted at all. Now that we got our tire on halfway, we're going to get the bead the rest of the way on by using some tire irons. Be careful not to pinch your tube. To help with this, you can air up the tube a little bit and put some soap on the end of your tire irons. You don't want too much air in your tube, you just want just enough to give the tube some shape. We're also going to use some of this to go around the whole bead. This is just a water-based lubricant that dries pretty easy over time. And now you're just gonna kind of rub that in on the edges. And we're gonna go opposite end of the valve, sticking the tire irons in. You're gonna start with one side and move along each one, and again moving the middle one back to the outside. Now that we're here, go ahead and wipe off this excess lube. This will just help it dry faster. Now that we have our tire on, we're gonna fill it with air before we put it all back together to be sure we didn't pop the tube. Also, another good note is to make sure that the bead around the tire is even, otherwise you'll end up with a wobble in your tire. We're airing this up to 45 PSI. When pumping your tire up, try not to go below 35 PSI as you could dent or damage your rim. And also try not to go above 45 to 50 PSI as you can just puncture your tube from too much pressure. Now we're gonna be putting this inner mud guard back onto the motor. Now we'll lay it on its side and put our motor screws back in. The most important thing to be sure about when putting these back in is that your motor holes line up properly. It can help to get one started so that way it's holding it together. We're also not going to tighten these down too hard until we have both sides in and we can do a star pattern. Now let's get the other side in and then tighten them all up. Now that they're all in, we're going to get them all snug. Now lay it back on the motor wire side, and we're going to pop this back into place. Now we'll grab our two little screws and put these right back into place. Now we're going to flip the motor back up and we're going to put the body back onto the wheel. As we go to put the body on the wheel, these rubber pieces, if you still have them on there, are going to have to be lined up just properly for it to slide down well. Now the body's back on, and we're gonna put our lift switch and suspension back onto the wheel. We're gonna put our bolts back through the suspension and the lift switch. Be sure to line your holes up, and then you may need to lift the wheel up a little bit just to get that final adjustment. I'm going to put this washer into the top, carefully sliding it in and pushing the spacer into it as it goes down. Got that one in. Now we'll go ahead and tighten this side. You want it snug, but not too tight, because you still want your suspension to be able to move and the lift switch to be able to wiggle back and forth. And now for the other side. Now the same with the washer. On the opposite side, we're going to drop it in through the top and then push the spacer through as we're doing that. Now we just tighten it all back together. When we're doing this repair, you'll notice there's some thermal paste on top of your wheel here under where the motherboard mount is. If you get some of this on your hand, you will get it all over the wheel. This wipes off easy with alcohol. Be careful not to use any harmful chemicals like acetone. Now we're going to plug in the motor wire back to the controller. First, starting with the hall sensor. You'll hear it click into place. And then the yellow motor wire. And then your green motor wire. And now your blue motor wire. And here's the view just one more time, in case you need a refresher. Now we can throw our motor wire cover back on. When putting this back on, you may have to move your wires around a little bit to get it to line up just perfectly. Another optional thing you can do is add silicone or hot glue around your motor wire cover when you're done, just to help a little bit with some of the waterproofing. Now we got our motor wire cover back on, we're gonna plug the battery connectors and the light wires back in, and then put the motherboard holder back on top of the wheel. On most batteries, you'll hear a pop when you plug in the first battery back to the controller. That is completely normal. Push those wires back into there, and now we'll do the other side. And then for the battery connector. Make sure it's all the way plugged in, that these seams are touching each other. Now we'll shove these wires back in and screw the holder back on. Now we're going to use our Allen screws to tighten back on the motherboard holder. I'm going to get each one just lightly snug and then go back through and tighten them all in a star pattern. Now we've gotten those tightened on, let's put our red piece back on. Now the red piece here has some little grooves, and those will line up with the grooves here on the side of your wheel. Slide it into place and tighten your screws. These don't need to be too tight, you don't want to crack the plastic. Alright, now you've just finished your S22 tire swap. Something I didn't mention in the video is there's a lot of other tires to choose from. Here we have the Kenda Street tire. You can also put a Kenda Navi tire on it, or any other 18x3 tire or 2.75x14 tire. And that's it for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and check out some of our other repair videos and riding videos that we have. Stay safe, ride safe, have fun.